everybody. Thank you for tuning in. This is Teach Me to Freelance, your source for all things related to starting, growing, and maintaining your freelance business. I'm your host, Jonathan Clem. This week, we're going to discuss how much you should charge your clients or what your hourly rate should be. Hourly rates differ largely from industry to industry, so you can't really compare freelance writing to freelance photography or freelance web development. They're going to have different average rates for each of those industries. For the topic of this discussion, we're going to make things simpler and not focus on hard numbers per se, but instead we're just going to focus on the other aspects that affect your hourly rate, such as what phase you're in. So there are 3 phases to your freelancing business. The first stage is your startup phase or your entry phase. And this is when you're trying to get into the market. You may have 0 or very few clients that you've worked for in the past. You may not have a proper portfolio built up. This is the time when you're going to charge the lowest amount. And the point being is you represent a risk to the client, right? They're going to shell out some money to get something from you. And in the beginning, at least, you don't have a track record or a whole lot of items in your portfolio that you can present to them. So that represents a risk. So in order to minimize that risk and compel them to use you, you may charge a reduced rate, or you may even do the work for free. The point being, you're cutting your prices in an effort to compete with more established freelancers. After the startup or entry phase, you've built up a portfolio, you have references, you've demonstrated that you can provide value to the clients. Then you can start to enter the subsistence phase. And this is where you charge the amount that you need, or you charge the amount that is average, because now you can actually compete on a value level with other freelancers or other small businesses that are in this field. Lastly, after you've passed the subsistence phase and you've got a lot of work under your belt, you've established a reputation, then comes the growth phase. And this is where you charge based on the value that you provide to the client. And this is, you'll want to make sure that you're charging more than you need to sustain yourself. And you really want to be focusing on growing at this point. So charging enough so that you can hire help or delegate some tasks. And the big focus is scalability and growing everything. For the 3 phases, you can kind of think of those as multipliers on a base rate that you may be charging. At the subsistence level, you may be charging 100% of a base rate. At the growth, you may be charging 150, 200, some multiple of that. And then at the startup or the entry phase, you may be charging half, a quarter, something lower than that. So the question then becomes, how do we figure out what our base rate should be? And there are a couple different ways to do this. An easy one is to just look and see what other people are charging. If you're on Freelancer or Updesk or some of these job posting boards, a lot of times you can look and see what other freelancers are charging and kind of get a feel for, what the average is, because it'll mention on their profile page they're charging X dollars per hour. So this isn't great because those numbers can be misleading. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're actually charging those rates. That's just their advertised rates. Another way is, if you have friends or colleagues who are already freelancing in your industry, they're a good resource to ask and see, what are they charging? What are clients paying? That kind of thing. Another very common technique is to take whatever it was that you're making at your past job, whatever the hourly rate was, and just double it. So, let's say at your past job you were making $20 an hour. As a freelancer, go ahead and charge $40 an hour. So this isn't a very accurate way of determining what you need to sustain yourself. Uh, there are multiple factors that you have to take into account, such as you're probably going to have to pay out of pocket for health insurance if you're going to transition to full-time freelancing. You've got to pay an additional self-employment tax. There are other expenses kind of associated with freelancing that is going to eat into your hourly rate. But doubling it seems to be fairly common. It's a good way to, get a quick estimation of what you should be charging your clients. And it does sort of help take into account, the increased taxes and other expenses. Lastly, you can calculate how much you need to charge by just crunching the numbers. For the first step, we need to add up all of our money going out. Okay, and we'll want to include expenses such as your rent or mortgage, utilities, if you have an auto loan, the price of that, health insurance. You'll also want to include items such as retirement savings and other things that aren't necessarily expenses, but you need to have that money. You add all of that up, and then you want to divide that number by 0.7. Dividing by 0.7 takes into account a rough 30% state and federal tax and miscellaneous expenses that you may encounter for your business. This 30% may be low, it may be high. You may want to do some more research into, what the taxes are for your state, and then also what's your marginal tax rate and that kind of stuff. But 0.7, or assuming 30%, it's probably going to be pretty middle of the road, pretty average. It's good to err on the high side too, because worst case scenario, you'll have slightly more money. So take the number that you've come up with for your total money out and divide by 0.7. For an example, let's just say that we've added up all this money coming out and retirement savings and all that, and we've come up with $35,000 a year is what we need. So if we divide that by 0.7, that means that we need to have revenue coming in to the tune of $50,000 a year. Okay, so the next step, we're wanting to take the number 52, which is roughly the number of weeks in a year, and we want to subtract the number of vacation weeks that we want to take. So this is an important step. If you want to take 2 weeks of vacation, your magic number to divide by is going to be 50. If you want to take 4 weeks, you're only going to be working 48 weeks. Okay, for this example, we're going to stick with 2 weeks of vacation. So that's going to give us 50. And when we divide 50,000 by 50, that means that we need to make $1,000 every week that we work. Okay. Our final step to figure out what our hourly rate needs to be is dividing this weekly number by the realistic billable hours per week. And this is a big part. You can't just divide by 40, because chances are if you're going to be working a 40-hour week, there's going to be a lot of additional work that you're going to do that isn't necessarily billable to a client, but is necessary for your business, such as maintaining your books, or driving to a meeting, phone calls, this, that, the other thing. It's very rare that you're going to have 40 billable hours per week if you're only working 40 hours a week. It's easy to have 40 billable hours a week, but that means that you're probably going to be working to the tune of 60 or 70 hours a week, depending. So again, in this example, we need to bring in $1,000 every working week. I'm going to assume 35 hours a week is what is going to be billable. And so doing the math, I come up with $28.57 an hour. and it's safe to just round that up to $30 an hour. So after doing all those calculations, we know that in order to have at least $35,000 a year and have 2 weeks of vacation and pay for all the things that we've established that we need to pay for, we need to charge at least $28.57 an hour. So once you come up to this number, it's a good idea to compare that to averages. You can look on the Bureau of Labor and Statistics website, or again, check around on Upwork, or ask any buddies that are freelancing in the industry, and just kind of see where your number falls. If your number is significantly higher than what you're seeing, you may need to adjust what your money out is. Maybe maybe that particular industry isn't going to be able to support you having a yacht loan or something like that. Ordinarily, though, once you crunch the numbers like this, chances are really good you're going to find that your rate is significantly lower than the average. One of the great benefits of freelancing is, there are lower administrative fees that, bigger businesses have to pay out. They're shelling out money for they're shelling out money for the storefront, and they have payroll expenses and this, that, the other thing. So chances are really good that after crunching all your numbers, you're going to find that your hourly rate is still going to be very competitive. So crunching all the numbers gives us our subsistence rate. So this is the base rate that we need to charge, in order to pay all of our expenses. So this is the rate that we'll base our reduced rate and the growth rate on. And the growth rate, what that is largely depends. I would say anything that gets you edging closer to or above whatever the average for your industry would be. And you'll want to use the extra funds, from using the growth rate to hire assistants, invest in advertising, invest in infrastructure, anything that's going to, grow your business, help to automate some things, or make, scaling that much easier. So now that we have, our various rates that we want to charge, we got to know, when to charge those or how to transition around those rates. So when I started out doing web development, I only charged $10 an hour, which was ludicrously low. I was competing with individuals, in other countries where the cost of living's lower and this, that, the other thing, and I was largely just kind of trying to, grow my reputation on Elance at the time and get some reviews under my belt. But even to this day, I don't charge $10 an hour anymore. But to this day, I will do the occasional free project. Mostly if it's going to give me an opportunity to work with an organization that I'm excited to work for, or if it's something using a technology that I don't really know a lot about, but I would like to. So again, I'm still, I've been freelancing now for coming up on 4 years, and I'll still do the occasional free project in an effort to build my portfolio and kind of branch out, or work with, or to branch out into other areas of development. And I think that's important, especially starting out. And then, as you go, charging reduced rates can be very beneficial to getting you exposure and getting you in front of new clients, or helping you to secure new gigs. You'll always want to be focusing on your portfolio and building up your portfolio and leveraging that portfolio to impress new clients. As you're gaining new clients, you'll want to charge, your higher rates. You want to kind of ease into that growth rate, And what I've used and what a lot of other people have had success with is this idea of you go in and you charge your reduced rate, you start to snag clients, you get a steady amount of income, and then on subsequent clients, you just charge a little bit more. And what happens is, you build up more and more clients, new clients, paying at a higher rate. You build up a higher sort of baseline of incoming revenue. And then you can always circle back and, let's say in my example, I snagged a client. They were used to paying me $10 an hour for work. Then the next client I got, I decided I'm going to charge them $20 an hour, which was still lower than the average. But if I'm working with them, I'm getting regular income from that client. I'll go ahead and circle back around and go back to the $10 an hour client and just let them know, hey, I've recently increased my rates due to the volume of incoming work. And then be cognizant of the fact that they could always say no. Ordinarily, though, if especially if you've been charging a reduced rate and that the client knows that, if they're, the chances are good that they went to other individuals first, or they were interviewing other freelancers, and they noticed that your rate was the lowest. Uh, if they know that and they're pleased with your work, chances are very good that they are not going to mind paying the higher rate simply because they've established a relationship with you, and it's less risky to stay with you than it is to go hunting for a cheaper freelancer. But just be aware. Don't make it sound like a shakedown, but you can very professionally and very eloquently just hey, due to the volume of work coming in, and just explain to them that there's a higher demand for your services, and because of that, you're charging a higher hourly rate. And they could say no, but again, that's the whole point of why you've built up a client base before coming back and charging the higher rate. And there you have it. Hopefully that helped answer some of the questions that you may have in regards to what you need to be charging starting out, and how to transition your hourly rates as you grow. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to subscribe, you can do so on iTunes and Stitcher, as well as YouTube. You can also check out the website at www.teachmetofreelance.com. I look forward to seeing you next week.